Hello, everyone, and welcome to Path Goal Theory of Leadership. This is Article 28, written by Robert J. House, critiqued by Mr. Craig Crawley and myself, Grant Venable, of Team Birmingham for Management 537. First, let's start with a quick summary of what the article defined the scope of Path Goal Theory of Leadership to be. First, we'll start with what it is. It is a dyadic theory in that it involves two individuals, the superior and his subordinate. Further, it is a task and person-oriented theory, focusing mainly on the effect that superiors have on their subordinates. Specifically, how it is the superior's goal to create an environment where subordinate goals are aligned with group goals and provide what is necessary for them to achieve these goals. Now, let's take a look at what isn't included in the scope. It does not analyze superiors' impact on groups or units as a whole, and focuses only on individual relationships between leaders and followers. It also doesn't consider emergent informal leadership or leadership as it impacts multiple levels of an organization. Lastly, political leadership, strategic leadership, and change leadership are also excluded from the scope of this theory. So as this is a critique, we should discuss what we thought was positive about this article. The biggest positive of the article overall was that it was written by the foremost expert on the topic. Having the author of the article be the man who created the theory means that the reader gets the best possible insight into the theory itself. The author is extremely knowledgeable about the topic, and it's very apparent early on. We also get special insight into how the theory came to be, which other writers would not have been able to provide. Additionally, we thought the author really did a good job strengthening his position by openly discussing counter-arguments and their lack of validity in regard to his theory. However, this article was definitely not without its faults. One of the biggest negatives of the article overall was the author's tendency to get derailed from discussing the theory, especially towards the end of the article, and begin to kind of pat himself on the back and start name dropping. He kind of seemed like he was more interested in talking about himself and his past than about the theory itself at times. This was really out of place and very distracting for the reader, and kind of left a bad taste in your mouth. Additionally, the article tended to get overly scholarly at times, getting really excessively wordy and making it harder to read for the content than really was necessary, we thought. The author also had several extremely long run-on sentences, making it really difficult to read, even more so than the previous note. It's very apparent that the author, while he's an excellent scholar and a brilliant theorist, his writing abilities are not as sharp, and like I said, you can see that in our last two criticisms. Lastly, the scope, which we saw on that earlier slide in our summary, seemed very narrow and tended to focus more on what wasn't included than what actually is included in the theory. So here we have our grades for the article as a whole. In terms of knowledge, the author has no parallel, as the theory he's discussing is his own. He's clearly very intelligent and does pack a lot into this article, so for that reason we gave him an A+ for that. Quality of content received a B+. There were a lot of interesting points to this theory, but the theory itself is also kind of obvious at times and doesn't really present very many new ideas. And this is kind of due to the fact that this theory was replaced by the charismatic theory in 1975. The writing for this article wasn't great, so we gave it a C for that reason. The run-on sentences and the self-recognition derailment towards the end also lowered the score because we kind of felt it had no place in the article and kind of took away from his point. As far as communication, at times it felt like the writer was being complicated just for the sake of being complicated, not really adding any new knowledge. And for this reason, we felt he struggled to effectively make his point, so we gave him a C in this category as well. So in conclusion, we wanted to leave you with a few of our overall thoughts. This was a good overview of path goal theory, and there was a lot of really good information for the reader to gain. The author was the expert on the topic, which really added a lot of good insight, but he was over the top at times, and the article was more difficult to read than was necessary. If he were a more skilled writer, we really think he could have made his points more efficiently and effectively. I want to thank you all for listening, and I hope you really found this video beneficial.